Welcome to the first day of the rest of your life. My name is Andy Zaremba, and welcome back to another episode of Vancouver Real. I have a really awesome episode lined up for you today, as I have a longtime friend on the podcast. But before I introduce her, I'd like to just give a shout out to, of course, where we're recording out of. This is out of our business Float House here in Gastown in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. And if you have no idea what Float House is and you'd like to learn more about floating, check out our website, floathouse.ca. And we have all sorts of great resources on there that can teach you everything you want to know about flotation therapy. In fact, if you happen to have a yoga or meditation practice, there's a good chance, and you're living in Vancouver, you have heard of floating before. And I personally love it as a great supplement to my meditation practice. I've lately started a daily practice, which has been quite profound to do it that consistently. And I find that floating just offers another unique environment to do it in. Again, eliminating as much external distraction as possible forces you to really go internal. So everything that's going on inside of you is really going to start bubbling up, from emotions to thoughts to bodily sensations, and all that's coming from you. And I find it really tunes you into a sensitivity that's sometimes harder to tap into when you're surrounded by sensory input or lots of stimuli going on around you. So if you would like to give floating a try, you can use the promo code VancouverReal, and that will get you a 20% discount on a single float. And of course, as always, I have to give a shout out to the Vancouver Real community, who in fact you know quite well, Sean and Candace. They've been helping us for a couple years now. Candace approached us to help us out with the podcast and everything that we're doing with Vancouver Real. And they've been really great. And we look forward to continuing to do future events and workshops. And we haven't rolled out too many this year because we've had some speed bumps, and Sean and Candace have had a little baby, so that's probably why those things have stopped, because we're doing the podcasting end of things. But we'd like to get those rolling again in 2019, so stay tuned for that. And if you'd like to get involved with the community page, you can connect through VancouverReal.tv, and the community page is Vancouver Real Community. And of course, I have to give a shout out to the Mindful Mass Meditation Group, which we're going to dive into a little bit today. And I always butcher the name of our Facebook group. Whenever I try to say it, it rolls off my tongue. It's Mindful Mass Flash Mob Meditation. Is that the name of it?
Sounds right.
Okay. If you type in that combination of words, you're going to find it.
Yeah.
And that's our Facebook group. And basically, we have to let you into the group. And I ask one question. The question is, do you want to come to events? And as soon as someone says yes, I'm like, you're in. So we have we're very strict with our accepting policies. But this is actually what brought the episode to fruition today, because our guest on the podcast is Carolyn Anne Budgell. And I guess I'm sort of putting the cart before the horse right there, but because I have one more announcement to make, and I have to give a shout out to our sponsor, Wise Monkey. And this is the last time I'll be mentioning them for now on the podcast, but it's a local brand that creates tea that is made from the leaves from a coffee plant. And it's really great because they actually have quite a good social impact in the countries that produce coffee, because there's these downtimes in the growing seasons where the farmers are not able to produce anything because of the growing cycles of the coffee plant. And what this tea enables them to do is they actually utilize the leaf of the coffee tree to make the tea. So it actually gives them more work, essentially, in times of the year when they don't have it. And that's really helpful for the people who live in coffee growing regions. So, and not to mention, the tea itself is beautiful. It's smooth. It's really smooth tea. I'm not a big tea drinker, but this is one tea that I definitely do drink. And it's like smooth tasting and really great. And it also has a good cause behind it. So that's Wise Monkey Tea, and you can find them anywhere on the internet. And I highly recommend checking them out. So today, you already heard the name of our guest. And I'm really excited to have you on, because we have been kind of talking about this for a while now. But Carolyn Anne Budgell, welcome to Vancouver Real.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here and to finally get to chat with you in a situation and a setting like this. We've spent a lot of time together in yoga studios and collaborating with our Mindful Mass group. So it's a lot of kind of in passing or more formal business that we're trying to get through when we see each other. So it's nice to sit down like this.
Yeah, and maybe one day one day we'll actually sit down and have that beer we keep talking about. It just never happened. It's been about 2 years we've been talking about, we should get together. Actually, it's happening after this podcast with our good friend Chad Weir.
Yeah.
Chad's going to meet us after this.
Today for me.
What's that? Tea?
Tea
Yeah,
for me
no
today.
beer at like 3:00 in the afternoon or whatever time it's going to be. But yeah, thanks for being on. Your website is actually carolynbudgell.com, carolynannebudgell.com. And you've really established yourself as a local yoga teacher and meditation teacher. You run multiple retreats. I think I met you the first time at Y Yoga, and I've taken your class multiple times, especially more so in the past. And your classes were always great. And then it was maybe 2 years ago when we first created the Mindful Mass page. And I get a Facebook message from you, and I haven't talked to you for a couple years at that point. And you're like, "Hey, I'd really love to get involved with what the Mindful Mass is." And I was like, "Yes, perfect. We need a meditation teacher." I'm like, "You're the perfect fit." And from there, we actually hosted our first joint event with Mindful Mass, and we had a great turnout. We were at the Woodward's Atrium. We had like a good 75, 80 people show up, and we did this giant flash mob meditation, and it was awesome. So that's a little bit of our backstory, but I'd like to know a little bit more about your backstory and how you got to choosing this path in your life of being like a really dedicated yogi and a meditation practitioner and teacher. Why don't you take us back to the beginning, to maybe even like the first time you even took yoga, and why did it sort of sweep you up and take on your life the way it has?
Okay, really good question. That's a really small question. I just need about 2 hours now
Oh, okay.
to answer. No,
Okay.
it's perfect.
We have the time if you want it.
We
but
have
I
lots
know.
of time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so funny. I never could have envisioned that this is where I would end up doing this kind of work and being even on stage as a yoga teacher, a meditation teacher like this, or being on camera like this. I never would have envisioned this, nor did I necessarily ever want it. Some people have dreams, and I don't know what my dreams were. I thought I was going to be a journalist because I do still love writing. I write a lot, more so about yoga and meditation experiences and kind of the inner world of oneself. I love writing about those topics now.
And you're very good at that too. Like
Thanks.
your Instagram page is awesome. The posts you make all the time are really, really great. So if you want a daily dose of inspiration from Carolyn, go check out her Instagram page.
Oh, thanks.
No
Thanks.
problem.
Yeah, I love to be conscientious about what I put out there. Everything is always definitely an aspect of what I'm experiencing in my life. Yet it's also, and because of that, it's always related somehow to yoga or meditation, because that's what I do every day, and my own contemplative nature is, reflected through my Instagram, and it's also real for me. So I thought I would be a journalist because that's kind of the industry that my family is from, sort of, on my dad's side. My dad worked for he worked for CBC, and then he worked for Global TV and BCTV his whole life. And my uncle, my dad's brother, worked for CBC and different television networks out of Toronto. So I just kind of thought, I didn't know what to think. I didn't have any plans. So I kind of went into school when I was to SFU when I was young, doing that, and then dropped out. It just I didn't take any time to think about what I wanted or what I needed. And
right. So you followed the typical path, and then you realized when you were there, I don't need that. Right.
No. And I just wanted to party. And so I did. I partied, and I got that out of my system, and I learned a lot.
Yeah.
Not in the formal academic sense, but I learned a lot. But so I did actually end up going back to school to study resource and environmental management. So I did a lot of work with Environment Canada and different kind of environmental organizations and nonprofits. After having lived in Whistler for a long time, I got really connected to nature, and I realized that this is something that I loved, because I didn't really know what I loved when I was in high school.
Yeah.
But I figured that out in Whistler, and so I went into that field. But I also discovered yoga in Whistler, and I really loved that. So I was kind of torn. I loved these two things so much, but yoga always pulled at me a little bit more strongly.
Right.
So I worked in the environmental field for a while, got a lot of experience, a lot of good experience using my brain and my heart and my, physical labor and lots of different things like that. So it was good, but yoga always won. Okay, so my first class ever was in Whistler before
Yeah.
I moved back to Vancouver to finish my degree and do my yoga teacher training. When I was in Whistler, the first class I took was at a community center in Whistler. Well, I can remember two classes. I'm not sure which was my first. Either one in a community center or one in someone's basement. Either way, great, kind of grassroots stuff.
Yeah.
In '98. And
Okay. Yeah.
one of the classes I remember in the community center, I learned triangle pose. And in this community center class, and I definitely farted loudly in that first class ever.
The cool thing about yoga is that's acceptable.
Yeah.
You can, I mean, you
It's
don't
like applauded. It's a great release.
You don't want to be the one to do it, but it's kind of some teachers in classes will actually say like, if that happens, it's part of what's going on in your body. So
Yep.
yeah.
And or it's a sign that maybe you're eating the wrong foods for a yoga practice.
Yeah.
Both.
Okay, so you farted during triangle. Okay.
Yeah. And then the basement class
Mm-hmm.
that may have also been one of my first ones. We did Happy Baby, and we were just rolling up and down on our backs on the floor. And for those of you that don't know, in Happy Baby pose, your whole like groin is, of course you're wearing pants, but your groin area is exposed. And just for someone I was 18 or 19 at the time, like that kind of positioning of my body with a bunch of other
was bad
middle-aged people. Well, I was just a little uncertain.
You're like, I shouldn't be like doing this in public.
It felt so strange. That was that. No farting in that class though.
Okay.
But so really great introductions to, I feel, really inclusive environments.
Yeah.
And, down the street, both of them were down the street from my house. I used to live at that time in Whistler K, and both those classes were less than a 5-minute walk from my house. So that community feeling was really nice too.
Nice. So you got into the world of yoga. It sucked you in as it does so many other people as well.
Yeah.
What do you think is like the big draw for you? So there's the community aspect. Of course, there's the physical practice of it, which is really great for the body. But what else attracted you to yoga?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think, I don't know. I mean, I was so, easily influenced at that age, as a lot of us are when we're 18, 19, 20. And a lot of people that I looked up to in the Whistler community were doing a lot of yoga. And then I moved to Vancouver, and that's when Yaletown Yoga was one of the only power studios in Vancouver. And
what year was that, roughly?
That was in 2004, 2005.
Okay.
And it was so fun to be part, again, like community, but people I really looked up to. I thought, well, the people that teach at the studio and that attend seem like there's something different to them.
There was something, I'm just going to touch on that really quick, because I remember, so I kind of caught the tail end of that studio. And I know that there were a lot of like really powerful teachers that came out of there, right? Like, and we know the local ones for sure, like Megan Curry, maybe Brandy, yourself, and maybe was Clara there as well.
Shawnee and Christine.
Right. So there's this really interesting core nuclei of people within that group that all went out and became teachers themselves, right? And that was the place of my second yoga class ever, but it was 2008. So definitely at the tail end of all that. But I remember being immersed in that environment, and I think that was around the time when they changed to Y Yoga too.
Yeah.
But it was but there was something about that studio that had an amazing feel to it, like you were touching on, right? There was something, and the people there, like, sorry to detract from what you were saying, but like the people there was something about them.
Yeah.
It's something about people who really sort of walk the walk, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and it did really, it drew me in also, because there's something different about them. But in so many ways, Vancouver is a baby city when it comes to yoga, and especially back then, there wasn't yoga like that happening in Vancouver, and thus the type of awareness right out there in the world, like the level of awareness that a lot of these people have or had, or sense of inclusivity or openness. I mean, there are obviously tons of humans in the world that have that level of consciousness, but that this community was quite loud. So you saw it, like you saw what was happening and like what the energy that was coming out of that group, you saw it. And especially because it had never really been happened in Vancouver prior to that. Right. So it was really cool. And I feel like I I became part of that community, also the timing was great for me as a continuing student and then becoming a new teacher. The timing was right that I got to feed off some of that energy and feed off some of that life, and still, it really got infused into my being able to practice and learn from a lot of those teachers. And I feel like I kind of inevitably carry some of that forward because it's in me. I mean, those teachings have been infused into me. And I'm a really big believer on honoring your teachers. So when people ask me, what's your background, I would instantly go to my first teachers and like say their names and who I've learned from, and, all the jobs I've had prior to this, even that don't involve yoga or meditation.
Right.
I feel it's really important to list really like where I've come from, because I wouldn't, if I wasn't living in the world and interacting with these people or taking these classes or having these jobs or these relationships, I wouldn't be where I am today.
Right. Well, they've imprinted on you,
Yeah.
and you take what whatever you take from anyone you interact with, and especially when someone has had some sort of influence in your life, and there's things that really rubbed off, that were characteristics that have sort of in some way been transmitted into you, which is really interesting. I find that a lot of people who practice with certain yoga teachers will actually, I find, start almost developing a similar looking practice, because it's like the teacher is teaching that way, obviously, in just a physical level, and like they're going to start making similar looking shapes to that teacher, right?
Yeah.
And then, of course, like whatever else is being transmitted, and that's an interesting aspect of yoga, is that yes, the physical practice is definitely part of it, but then there is the how would you call it? Maybe the teachings is a good way to say it.
Right.
That go along with it, which you get a little dose of in every single class. You get that little dose of mindfulness. You get a dose of a little bit of philosophy, of yogic philosophy, and then you get the practice. Mm-hmm. So it does become this container for transformation, I think. Mm-hmm. Maybe you could talk about that a little more, or maybe talk about the qualities in which you saw in these people that you think are being carried forward. Because I think that's really interesting. I'm really big on like trying to become the best version of myself, or helping people become the best version of themselves. So what was it about these people that really stood out to you as like making them different or special?
Right. Well, yeah, it's a really good question, because that's definitely something that I think about a lot as, a teacher in the city, teaching yoga and meditation, and, as an influencer or whatever it is. I'm really conscious of what aspects of my personality I kind of really dwell on, or like that I allow to shine through when I teach, and aspects of myself that I'm working on, stuff that comes up, and how do I quell that as a teacher, or how do I share it honestly in a non-confrontational way, or, like just to be I love to be as honest and as upfront as I can be.
Yeah.
And I think that was a big aspect of what I saw at that time when power yoga was first coming to Vancouver. A lot of these, and it was a lot of Anusara too, but there was a lot of like sweaty power yoga, hot yoga, and Anusara, and a lot of these teachers crossed over into all those different styles of yoga, the teachings of it. And really they were, in a lot of ways, like really honest, still are, very attentive, watchful of their students. So they were great at sharing and exuding their passion for yoga. Like I said, there's a lot of fire, a lot of excitement, and a lot of passion, yet they still had the ability to be really attentive and watchful.
Right.
And for sure, who knows what was going on in their minds? I know teachers get caught up in stuff all the time, but
sure.
They were still able to be there with their students. And so I really try to work on that still, is to, share my excitement and my love for this practice, because definitely it shifted. Every day is different too. Like I love the practice, but maybe to a different extent each day, but just to still be there with the students and be attentive to their needs. It speaks for so much, but it doesn't even involve speaking sometimes, which is beautiful. Like as a teacher, I could just be there with the group and not be communicating verbally,
yeah.
And they feel it, and
yes.
and they love. Yeah. And like when you talk about a container, to me, yes, we're in the container of a room, and you and I right now are sitting in this room, and we have this beautiful like plant life around us, and you've created this beautiful space for us to talk, but I've had experiences with you before specifically, and with students, where I don't need to be in the container of a room or a specific tangible space, and I can help to create something that is an imaginary boundary, but we're still having such a powerful experience.
Yeah.
Same goes with words. Sometimes we don't need words.
Yeah. That's awesome. So keep
Yeah,
going down that.
it feels good.
Keep
I
pulling
just
on
got
that thread.
goosebumps.
Yeah.
I gave myself goosebumps,
because
but I really feel that way.
there's this idea of well, you can think of it in a few different ways potentially, but it's sometimes a little bit hard to articulate exactly what you're saying, because it is sort of a feeling as well. But there's this idea of holding space, opening space, creating a container where something like that can happen, and it is in a way a sacred space. For some reason, it's a sacred space where it's like something is happening in there that's different, and it is a bubble from everything else. Like, we're in the middle of Gastown right now, on the downtown east side, and we're having this really interesting conversation about yoga, meditation, mindfulness, spirituality, whatever you want to call it. There's something, it's palpable. Like, you can feel it when you're in a container like that. And I think, and one thing you're great at, from my experience, is in your classes and with the mindful mass, is really setting the tone and like the setting for that experience to happen. And that's when like something magical can potentially come through, right?
Right. Well, thank you. And I definitely credit two of my main meditation teachers. One of them is my therapist, who's really taught me how to create a container. She's also a meditation teacher, which has worked out for me.
Great. Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting too how when I'm creating a and it must be interesting to hear us talk about this, especially if one has not been in a yoga class where they've had a mind-blowing experience or some kind of life-altering experience, or they haven't been in a meditation where they got vulnerable and allowed themselves to go deep. It would be weird to hear this kind of a conversation, because you kind of need to have sort of opened yourself. Yeah, it's something more so that you feel.
Yeah.
But I think that anyone who's in the kind of educational field, or therapy or self-help, like even if you haven't been in a classroom setting like that, if you've done one-on-one, I mean, you understand a little bit what it means to create a container and have boundaries. But I find a lot of the time that all people need is permission. Even if I don't even know some people that might be coming to my meditation workshops or to my classes, but all I need to say is like one little thing, and the mind can release this pattern that's like blocking them off. Their body is saying, no, I'm going to judge this. I'm going to stay close to this. And then I simply say, hey, you can go deeper, or you can choose to stay closed and not change. Yeah. And then, so please, like, feel free to go. I just say one thing like that. And in my mind, yes, I've done a lot, because I've done a lot of work on myself, but I haven't really done anything. I've just said one thing that they responded to well or differently.
I think you hit it on the head when you said gave people permission. And it's like sometimes people are just waiting and looking for somebody to say, like, it's okay to experiencing what you're experiencing. It's okay to become a full version of yourself. You're allowed to be happy. You're allowed to feel good.
Yeah.
Because so many times it's like, sometimes I'll get caught up in this idea that like, oh, I shouldn't be too happy about my life. You know what I mean? And I'm like, well, why am I doing that? Why am I sort of dimming my own light, so to speak? And sometimes it's like when you have someone who's in a relative position of authority, not a great way to describe it. I'm not going to say authority, but you are a teacher in that sense, and you sort of just say, hey, you could be lighter. Why are you clenching your jaw so much?
Yeah.
Whatever is going on for that person, and you never know how that releases, and then they have one of those epiphanal sort of aha moments, and then that shifts something for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's definitely, a big part of it obviously is timing. So if you if you want to call that the universe, or whatever, however things work out, but a lot, these epiphanies happen with timing. And I definitely had experiences like that back when I first started doing yoga. It was all about timing. I feel like I was just in the right place, in the right classes, at the right time, on the right day, and with the right teachers. I mean, I was definitely attracted to teachers who had kind of contained anger management issues because I did at the time too. And for I was just drawn to teachers and I didn't even realize that they were going through that. I would find out later. And but there was nothing kind of fake about what they were offering. And so that's definitely how I choose to teach now, is from a really honest standpoint. I will, talk about how it's a privilege to do the work, period. It's a privilege to even be sitting here with you and talking about this. There's so many people in the world, even in this neighborhood that we're in right now in Vancouver, that they don't have the privilege of even having a guaranteed place to sleep in tonight. And so to be able to do this work of inquiry is such a privilege, and I too can go to that place of shame for having such a privileged life.
Right.
And so the reason that I now love to give people permission to feel joy is because I've had my therapist say to me over and over and over again, like, you don't put down your work, don't put down your value in this world.
Yes.
And if there's any opportunity presents itself to help people in neighborhoods like the one we're in now or elsewhere, do it. Just help however you can. And that's been something that I've really kept on my mind a lot lately, is to help and say yes to different opportunities, no matter how you think they should look or ought to look. Just say yes to different things that come up.
Like doing meditations with 12 people in the rain when nobody shows up. Other than the 12 people that showed up, thank you.
That was amazing.
Great.
The last mindful mass that we led, we had a small turnout and it was rainy and we were outside. And it was actually, I feel like, the most contained, silent, in some ways really silent experience we've had, like with just the sounds of the rain outside and the float planes. We were down by Jack Pool Plaza near Cole Harbour in Vancouver, so we were surrounded by the planes and the rain, and there were just 12 of us ish, which was really easy for us to drop in together. And
yes,
it was really.
I really enjoyed that session. It was cold, and we were all kind of huddled under this this roof or whatever underneath the convention center, and there was something different about it. It felt good.
Yeah.
A small group, and we were like considering, should we even do it? It's like, it's raining, but we're like, let's do it. Let's just do it. Whoever shows up, that's fine. And it was still great.
Yeah.
And we had people saying like, when's the next one again? And I'm like, good question. We'll figure that one out. But touching on that point you made about, how to help people, how to impact people. And it doesn't necessarily, I find, have to come in, might sound kind of weird, but in a doing, because you can help people through your being, and like you said, like sometimes you can hold a class and you can shift people just by the way you're holding yourself and you're maintaining your own presence and composure, even with dealing with potentially difficult personalities. When I was down in Peru, I'm going to shoot this back to Duva really quick, but I was in Peru and I asked Mother Ayahuasca during a ceremony, I'm like, okay, how can I best serve? How can I best serve? How can I best serve you? And I didn't put a thing on it. I'm not saying humanity, anything. I just said, how can I best serve? And the answer I got back pretty quickly was just like, just be a light. Just be that light for people that you can influence people just by what you're putting out into the world and what you're trying to show as an example, because you never know how that can inspire somebody and lift somebody up, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's what you were touching on a little bit about, when you're holding space for a class, like, you're talking about like whatever's going on for you, you can like influence the class by how you are in it. Yeah.
Yeah, we get I think it doesn't really matter kind of what position you find yourself in the world. We forget how powerful we are as humans, and unfortunately also how powerful our demons are and our negative attributes or negative tendencies, for the mind.
Yeah. And
for me specifically, when I get caught up in shame or regret, or I can't let go of an argument that I was stuck in, it's evident, and we can't really show up for others because we're caught up in our own stories about in the past or the future. And unfortunately, a lot of us forget that that's obvious, and we forget that we're not going to be listening as closely to others when we got caught up in our thoughts, and we're not going to be present with others even when they're talking to us, and they clearly think they're having a conversation with us and we're actually just having a conversation with ourselves. So it's and yeah, I feel like it's such a precious opportunity to be able to teach yoga classes or meditation classes, or even to be able to sit and talk with someone, because you never know how you're going to impact them or what you're going to leave them with. So why not do the work on how to process quickly whatever you're going through, or learn how to set it aside so that you can actually be with people when you're in the room with people, because you never know what they're going to hold on to. Even like a look that you give, or a sigh that you have, or whatever it is, or if it's like some moment of true connection, or a moment of, I do a fair bit of physical touch in my classes, so a moment of touching someone, only if I'm in a day where I'm feeling centered and grounded. But people are gonna, for better or for worse, they're gonna walk away with something that you have presented yourself as. So to be in our highest level of awareness around what we're presenting it's everything, I really think. So that's why I do so much inner work, and I share it. I can't not share what I'm going through. I can't share fake stuff ever. It just doesn't, I wouldn't be able to be in this job. I think I would be sick a lot more. I would have burnout a lot more if I wasn't being true to myself.
When you mentioned, because I'm pretty sure you're still human. You're human, right? Right. We have emotions
and human.
Right. We have all of our stuff and our shadow aspects of ourselves, like those negative emotions that come up in all of us. Like that's part of the human experience, I think. And can we quell those to some extent? Sure. But when you find yourself, like, say, getting caught up in reenacting a conversation that bothers you for some reason, or what do you do to try to shift your state? And as a meditation teacher, I feel like this is right up your alley. So what do you do when you catch yourself in those situations?
So my process right now, when I'm caught up, I'm really good at not letting go of things. Or I have been in the past really good at holding on to resentment and holding on to what I should have said in a conversation, or how I could have shown them that they were wrong. I'm really good at being that person if I want to be. So the best way for me to let go of things when I'm stuck in a story is actually to talk about it, and not with the person that I'm necessarily stuck with. Usually not. I need to kind of talk with an unbiased source. And so my partner, my husband, Mohammed, is a really good sounding board for me. And even when I'm having issues with him, which happens, just once or twice a year with my husband. No, but
that's it. Wow, you guys are on fire. Yeah.
But just to be honest in a non-emotional way, and that's hard, right? But if you can kind of separate yourself from the emotion around it, and just to say, for me, a lot of the time it's I feel hurt or I feel sad, and it's not because someone else has made me feel that way, but to actually just acknowledge what's underneath my, oh, you're wrong, or I can't let go of this, to acknowledge what's underneath it. And actually for me to say it out loud is such a weight off my shoulders. So currently that's my process.
Just to express it.
Yeah, to say it. It used to be a lot of writing, and writing still really works for me. As I said, I love writing. But I actually, right now in my life, for whatever reason, at the phase that I'm in, saying it helps me process it a lot more quickly. And I feel like I've literally released it. It's come out of my being through my mouth. Something it's a really quick way for me to let it go.
Right. It's interesting, right? Sometimes you do need to express those things.
Yeah.
I find even with, we talked about, you mentioned there, like not saying something that you maybe should have said. And there's this idea of like incorporating the shadow into yourself. Whereas like if you were like at a party or something and said somebody poked at you in some way and you didn't like it, and you kind of absorbed it, as opposed to like saying something back, in a way you can kind of like you internalize it a little bit more than if you stood up for yourself too, because it's like there's that fine balance as well of like being polite, but it's like if somebody's like pushing on your boundaries and encroaching on you, at what point do you say, hey, no? And you're like, I can vocalize that I don't like what you're saying to me right now, and express that directly, as opposed to like taking it with you and harboring. Is that something you work with at all, or is it more just like you take it away and then express it? in a different way?
No, that's a great question. I'm working on that more. That's the kind of thing, usually if it's a situation I know I'm going into and I'm going to be with a personality that's challenging for me, I mean, those are the best times to practice it, right? So generally what I'll do is when I sit in meditation, which right now it's about 5 minutes a day. That's the amount of time that right now I have for meditation.
Well, yeah, your life's wild right now. So you're getting out of babyland. So
coming out of babyland
yeah.
and coming back into whatever's next land. But so I actually right now I definitely need that time to stop and just get centered, especially around what I want to share with the world next. It's really important for me. And also meditation is a really good time for me to process why triggers come up. So many meditation teachers and masters will say, if something keeps coming up for you, if it's a conversation or a demon or patterns in different relationships, the same thing keeps coming up, you have to go deeper into that demon or that shadow side and like, why is that triggering you still? So meditation isn't just a time, as a lot of us know, to be still and silence the mind and be quiet.
Right.
It's actually a time to inquire. So I do use meditation as a time to enact how those conversations will go next time I'm confronted with them.
I think that's really good. Yeah.
Rather than pausing in the middle of a conversation, because that's not always realistic when you're being triggered. You can't pause and take it, because I love hand on heart. So I can't always pause, put a hand on my heart and then respond how I want to in some conversations.
Right. Yeah.
So to plan ahead of time in my meditation, like, okay, well, how do I want to stand up for myself?
Right. And how do you show up in the world when you're in those situations, right?
Yeah.
What are some of the aspects that let me talk about what are the main benefits you've received from being a regular meditator and a teacher of meditation?
Okay. Initially, it was the ability to release certain friendships and relationships from my life with more grace.
Oh, okay.
So but also just to release, period, some friendships and to move on, to be able to move on from. And
how did that come about? So how did you gain that ability to let go of things easier?
I guess I did have more honest conversations with people where in the past and definitely there are still some things that I haven't wrapped up from my past, as I'm sure it's not it's not a new thing for humans to have unfinished business, but more so I would try to have more honest conversations with people about things.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the transition into teaching yoga full time, it was in some ways really natural. I left certain jobs. I used to be a server, so I worked in Whistler and in Vancouver. I worked at many different restaurants that were just toxic to my already toxic way of living and anger.
So not a great environment
partying.
For you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So literally making that physical change of lifestyle and career, that all the friendships and all those shifts happened more naturally as well.
Right.
Can you repeat the question one more time?
I was basically just thinking about how how meditation has benefited you in the sense, for example, there is like a mindfulness practice of just being aware of what's coming up inside internally, the thoughts, whatever you're being triggered by, and like you said, there is that place for introspection in there as well of okay, let's look at that thought. Why is that thought coming up repeatedly? Sometimes it's something in my life that I have to deal with. And when that happens, what I kind of tend to do is I'm like, all right, how many angles can I look at this thing from? And how many different viewpoints can I look at it? And then once I sort of pack that thing away, I'd be like, can I put that aside for now? It's is that thing really happening right now? So it's acknowledging that transient state of everything. That's one thing that really helps. But then I like how you've incorporated the idea of also not being afraid to have the conversations that are difficult too, right? Because it's as I'm in this space as well, and there's this term called spiritual bypass, and it's just oh, I don't have to engage with anything. I can just sort of float by and get by in the world, and I'm just gonna be above it all, right? Mm-hmm. But then there's the element of engaging in life because we're here and this is what we're doing. It's how do you navigate that space maybe?
Yeah. Yeah, it's so I guess this would pertain to your question of how's meditation benefited
Okay,
you
yeah,
as well.
I went off track a little bit
I'm
there.
thinking a lot more about non-judgment
Right.
now. I mean, I definitely come from a background of a lot of anger, and so it was something that was felt very real for me for a long time, that it was who I was. And so the more unpacking everything, like what lies beneath that, what lies beneath that. And so the inquiry for me has been so real. And it's a big part of many Tibetan Buddhist lineages of meditation is the inquiry. But one of their big questions is, who am I, or what am I, who am I, who am I? But you start, that's a very big question. So
Yeah.
obviously,
Yeah.
but I would start as, why do I have these emotions, or what, da, 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 da. And it's definitely led me to more of a place of non-judgment. That's a really hard one still.
Well, that's a tough one, right? Because it's like there are obvious things that are like right and wrong in the world that we live in this world of duality, which we all have to live in and play in for now. So there's the obvious things of right and wrong. One idea I've been sort of playing with for a while is that like, it's interesting as to what announces itself to us. You know what I mean? It's like, why that thing? Because there's a million things in the world going on that we could probably get upset about if we wanted to. Right? So it's like, but why is that one thing? Because like there's all sorts of things happening around the world at any given time: tragedies, starvations, wars, whatever. There are a million things going on, but we have this interesting ability to be able to block most of it out, and then we can get really upset about, oh, my meal didn't come the way I wanted to at the restaurant, or something like that. You know what I mean? So what is it? Or that's pretty maybe a more shallow and superficial example, but like, why the thing that for whatever reason grips your attention? Why that thing? And what is that telling you about you?
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So as far as I think we should talk about like spiritual bypassing a little bit too, just because it's prevalent, and is specifically in the yoga community right now, just with the amounts of like sexual abuse allegations that are coming out from all these master teachers, or with regards to their students that are coming out now.
Is there more of that going on now? Because I know there was a couple pretty high profile ones in the past years, but there's more now?
Yeah, within this year. I think it's just within this year. Patabi Joyce, who created the Ashtanga system, quite a few women have come out against him as well now. And so it's interesting to be part of a community that has, unfortunately created, in a sense, people like this and allowed for this type of behavior to occur with teachers like this. So to see it happening, and whether it's with sexual abuse or even just people who claim to have the answer or who claim to have overcome everything, but won't look at their own behaviors or patterns or anger that erupts or whatever it is. So
like the guru status type people.
Yeah.
Right. Not all of them, for sure.
Not all of them. And we do need teachers. And so sometimes I think, and this is where non-judgment comes in for me, is if someone has found a teacher that they relate to and it's helping them change their lives for the better, then great. But also I hope that they move on from that teacher when they find that they don't need, because I do really believe that it's important to soak up teachings from many different teachers in one's lifetime, because we're constantly changing, as are our teachers.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to be part of a community and there is an aspect to the yogic, the Hindu community, that really adheres, like the guru, one teacher for your life, like one teacher per student. I live in a different culture than that, and I don't really believe in that. I don't believe in dogmatism at all.
Right. And I think you got to really question that one too, right? It's just like, well, why do I have to only learn from one person for the rest of my life? And I get this analogy of, I've heard this one before, because I've dabbled in many different practices in my life of different types, and I've heard the expression, well, is it better to dig lots of little holes in different areas, or to dig a deep hole into one thing? Right. And the answer is not so clear which is better. And maybe they're all trying to get at the same thing anyways. Right. So it's like you can get there by digging a deep hole into yoga, or maybe you have to dabble and find the thing that works for you.
Well, that's what I was going to say, is that I think that intention is such a big part of that. It's like, well, looking at why are you digging so many holes? Is your intention, is it deep and meaningful for you? Is it going to make your life as well as the people around you, their lives better? Or are you doing it because you're trying to get to whatever it is, like one thing, one height, one.
Yeah. I feel like, here's the thing, you touched on this too, like, about like the whole guru complex thing. And there's a lot of that stuff going on. And it doesn't just occur in yoga for sure. Like it definitely occurs in like the personal development space or like these online personality types where people get sucked in and they're paying like literally tens of thousands or $40,000, $50,000 just to be in somebody's presence.
Yeah.
Like that is a real thing. And I know specific examples. I'm not going to go and start naming names right now, but it's like that happens quite frequently. And and a lot of it is, and here's the thing, there are some that are really good. And there are some that, will, and people do benefit from it, but it's like, be really careful. You know what I mean? Because like there's a lot of these sort of self-help gurus, let's just call them that. And we're not going to name any names, and I don't want to talk about anyone in particular, but like they will charge absurd amounts of money for the promise of, we're going to heal your pain for some reason. And a lot of times pain is what draws people into these things, right? So it's like, so it's really, it's slippery territory.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It also brings up a point of, valuing oneself in this industry. Like, how do you value yourself when you have these people that are this has come up so much as a teacher, for one, who I don't want to be a guru, which, and I'm almost like, I feel like too honest about my faults and my failures and like the dark sides that I deal with.
I think that makes you a human. And I think that's why people respect you a lot. Like people really genuinely appreciate and respect you. And it's like they come to you. And it's not like you're out there trying to capture people or something.
Yeah. So definitely that's something that I'm conscious of is, being real, but not to the point of using the platform for therapy or unloading or placing my burdens on other people. So then, because I'm using this platform in a sense to be who I am, so in some ways it's almost too easy. I'm like, cool, I just get to be myself and teach a little bit of yoga and meditation. This is my job. Well, then how do I value that? Because people will do this, basically what I'm doing, for free because they really want to be in this industry. But yet I look to some of my mentors or people out there that essentially I would one day perhaps want to do something along the lines of what they're doing. And they're charging like, I can't even say how much more than I am. Look, well, how do we take care of ourselves?
I'm not demonizing people for trying to make money. I'm not doing that because that's the world we live in. You know what I mean? Yeah. So don't get that impression from me, because like people have to charge what they have to charge, and if you can charge more to make a living, great, so be it. I'm just saying, watch out for that.
Well, that really always makes me question too. Well, who's authentic and who's not? Like the money, just because you've placed so much money on what you do doesn't mean you're authentic, but maybe it does. I mean, it's such a confusing and convoluted, and I love that you mentioned that it happens in other industries, because I found myself, this is just the nature of the industry because of social media now. A lot of industries, there's so much of everything out there now available. And so I get stuck on that because I don't want to be competing on social media the way a lot of people are. I don't have it in me. And it's also not the generation that I'm from. So I find myself complaining to other people about these concerns that I have and hesitations. And they'll say, oh, it's like that in my industry too. Oh, it's like that in my industry. And then I realize, okay, I just need to keep talking about what I'm experiencing. And I'm given perspective. The more I share, I get that amazing perspective that I need.
I think sharing authentically as possible is the thing to do. You know, if that's what you feel inclined to do. You know what I mean? If you feel like you want to share publicly, then great, do it. And be as authentic as you can, or I can. It's just like, the funny thing about it too is that my views shift all the time. You know what I mean? Like I'll learn something new, and it's changing my perspective on things. And it's just like I'm very high in trait openness and personality trait openness.
Okay.
So I'm always just like, oh, look at that, oh, neat. And I'm like always getting pulled all over the place, but by different ideas. But the whole thing is too like, okay, well, there's truth to that. and there's truth to this, and these things contradict each other a little bit. So how do you reconcile that? You know what I mean? Or can you? And can you be okay with not being able to reconcile those two things, right?
Right.
So it's an interesting process, and I think the whole thing is a process. But like, again, like, you know, it's interesting. Like you mentioned, like the yoga guru types, or the ones that have been I guess called out for whatever their inappropriate behavior towards their students. Like that happens in a lot of different like fields, like we said. Like there's this really great book, if anyone's really interested in learning about this world more, it's called Combating Cult Mind Control, and it's by this guy named Stephen Hassan, who's actually a cult deprogrammer, and he gives all these examples of people throughout history and like within the last 100 years, or people like there's this one famous Zen, so he's a Buddhist meditation like figure, and like he had tens of thousands of followers worldwide, and apparently he had either HIV or AIDS, and it was known that he was sleeping around with like all of his disciples and some of his higher ups within his, I don't know, organization, knew that he was doing this, yet he was pretending to be this enlightened being while he's sleeping around while he's HIV positive.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like that sort of thing happens. And it's like, well, you know, how do you navigate that? I mean, I think it's a reflection of people not dealing with their shadow side personally. Yeah.
Well, and even how do you deal with it yet also I mean, that person you're speaking of is an amazing, like profound teacher, and someone that I look up to for a lot of their teachings.
Which one?
The teacher that you were just talking about from that book.
Who was spreading AIDS. Do you know that book?
Yeah. No, but I know that teacher.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, who was spreading AIDS to his students.
Right.
But also, like, I mean, I would say a pretty insane person, and at the same time has a lot of profound offerings.
And that's the weird thing about it too, right? Is it's like because it's not necessarily all bad, and that's risky to say sometimes. You know what I mean? Because like I heard it put really well by. It was this guy. I'm gonna butcher the name, okay? But he was a famous lawyer who was Jewish, who decided to represent one of like the head ups in the Nazi war criminal organization, and he was a Jewish person who believed in like the idea of innocent before proven guilty. He really believed in that idea, so he agreed to defend this higher up and within the Nazi organization against like the crimes that they had committed during that time of the year. And he defended him fully and honestly, and of course the guy was found guilty anyways. But he still, and it was his people that were being persecuted by them. But he still stepped up and defended them because he believed in that due process. But he said something along the lines of, and again, I wish I could remember his name, so sorry about that, folks. But he said that, you know, even really, really bad people are actually people that we think is really bad are actually good most of the time.
Yeah.
Which is a weird thing to say, but it's like, and that's hard to accept, like the whole idea of like judgment, you know, like when do we judge people and how should we judge? And then there's the spiritual bypass aspect, and I try to look at it as all learning, you know, I try to look at it as all learning and being like, okay, you know, and it's okay to change your opinion. It's okay to change your mind and change your viewpoint as you learn new information, you know? I don't know. What are your thoughts on all of that?
Well, from the Buddhist,
on that rant.
like, no, it's amazing, and it's so relevant. From the Buddhist perspective, and specifically, like there is one aspect of Buddhism is this idea that there's basic goodness. There's basic goodness in everyone. So underneath all the crap that some people put out into the world, there's like there's a current of goodness underneath everyone. Some of us have no access to it whatsoever. Some of us are really tapped into our basic goodness. And then I always draw from that when I'm working with people that are challenging, is to remember there's goodness, but they've had stuff happen to them in their lives, and it's heartbreaking what has happened to some people. And for me now, I'm at a stage where when I go in to teach a group, or I go in to any kind of situation where there are people, even if I've never met them before, I can sense that the second I walk into the room who is less connected to their basic goodness than others.
Right.
And I can tell, like, really by how people, their body language, how they're either sitting in their chair or sitting on the floor or standing. It becomes quite evident.
What do you see when you're looking for that in people?
It's generally more of a hunched position around the shoulders and hunched in the spine. Looking at eye movements as well. Eye movements or kind of if there's a sense of ease that they're exuding to be in a space with other people or not.
Right. Are you a very sensitive person?
I guess so. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was always labeled differently, like dramatic, reactionary. And it's just because I didn't know how to get in touch with my emotions.
Do you feel a lot? Like, do you feel like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I wouldn't say I'm empathic. I don't know. And I also have a hard time sometimes with some of those labels just personally because I find myself, if I'm asked questions like that, or if, are you intuitive? I'll immediately go to this place of judgment because I don't think I am. And so I'll think, okay, now I really want to feel intuitive, or I really want to be a sensitive person because that'll make me a better teacher, a better person. So that's instantly where my mind goes when I'm asked those questions.
The reason I asked is because you were just really kind of honing in on very specific and small details of body language, even, right? And you sort of picking up on those states when you're in a room with somebody.
Well, and yeah, so I think that I am sensitive. I've also really worked on it. I mean, I feel like in some ways it's become a skill for me because I've spent 10 years now teaching yoga full time. No other job. I don't think any other job. I think it's been 10 years full time now.
Awesome.
Where
Good
I've
for you.
literally been. Thanks. I've literally just been looking at bodies for 10
Right.
sweaty bodies.
Right.
So it is a skill that I've tried to develop, and because I lead teacher trainings now for yoga and meditation, now I have or want to go deeper with people into looking at why they are how they are in life, not physically, but on a deeper level. So now I'm learning, how to push people emotionally in some of them, especially when I'm leading teachers, because you're a better teacher the deeper you go into yourself. So I know that. So I want to help, if people are willing, I'm going to help push them and nudge them deeper into aspects of themselves. So now I'm really having to read energy in the room and like what's right here, what's not right here, what should I do now, or how do they need support now? Should I back off? So it's just gone deeper and deeper because I feel like what I need to be offering to the world is more teachers that are aligned with themselves and not just aligned with trying to please students and give students a good workout. I want to put teachers out there into the world that are really going to, help people change their lives. We need more people who are more conscious and going to help others in the world. That's what I think. And so I feel like that's where I'm best suited right now because I've done so much work in this field and on myself that right now I see that I really want to work with teachers because that's going to, be able to affect the biggest amount of people. But I do a lot of one-on-one work too because it's less in some ways taxing for me to do one-on-one work. And I really get to know people when I'm doing one-on-one work, which is so wonderful.
It's a deep dive, really. Yeah.
And they might tell you how you've changed their life, or you might see that they've had a shift in a one-on-one session with them, or you might not know. And you're just doing your best and sending them out into the world after a session. And not knowing is sometimes the hardest aspect of being a teacher. And so how do I deal with that not knowing? And I was going to bring this up with you talking about, that people are inevitably good. They're, essentially good.
Right.
But there are bad things that happen to them or they have bad traits. I thought too a lot about this Buddhist concept of, uncertainty or change is constant. Change is the only constant. Life is uncertain, but we try to control it. Or I want to teach a good yoga class. Just going back to how do I support teachers in this industry is a lot of teachers are just trying to be popular. And I get it because you're on stage and that's the industry, just like other industries where acting, singing, all that, you need to be popular in order to survive. So that happens with the yoga industry too. and it, it propels a lot of self-hate, a lot of competition. And I've been, a victim and, been definitely contributed to those feelings a lot with myself and with other teachers. And so really the lesson underlying all of it is that you can't control anything except yourself. And I feel like every lesson in life will somehow come back to that. All you can control is yourself. And like you said, it's about learning. And I think it's about learning about yourself. So I want to be out there and help people learn about themselves.
Well, I think you're doing it.
Thanks. It's a tricky space to be in.
Well, it's a tricky space to be in, but it's a constant evolution, and you are doing that. And I know, like from my own experience with you in your classes and experiencing your meditations and just our conversations, I think you're extremely well suited for that. You do a great job, and like there's something about you that attracts people in, because you do have a calmness about you. You do have that sense of peace that is palpable. Again, like it's not just like I look at you and you're like chilled out. You're like, no. I feel your chilled outness, and if that makes any sense whatsoever. Yeah. But that's what I get from you. So I think you're on the right path. You're doing a good thing.
Thanks.
How here's the thing. Well, we're at an hour.
Okay.
And
great.
It's amazing how quickly it goes by.
Yeah.
I mean, like I feel like we could go for another hour, no problem.
Yeah, I think so too.
But we do have to meet our buddy Chad.
Yeah.
However, what do you have coming up? What's coming down the pipe for you?
Okay, so first, what I would like to say really quickly is
Sure.
some pieces of advice that I would offer to.
Oh, good. Yes.
This just was kind of, I apparently get some ideas in this room, so I'm going to have to come back and do more work in this room in the future.
I think you have to come back on the show again.
Yeah.
Nice.
I was thinking about, what advice would I give to, I'll just speak first to teachers of yoga or teachers of meditation or teachers of any kind along this path of becoming your best self or, this wellness industry. I think that what's really important is to get clear on what you want to put out into the world, like get clear on what you're good at and what you love. And, sometimes people jump into things and they do it because they think they have to. And unfortunately, I just feel like you can do better than that. There's so much more out there for you than just doing what you think you should. So to get really clear is one. And my therapist now, I have a new therapist who's, she's really tough on me, but I need that. She's really good. She's a tough love woman. And she says that you can't get clear when you sit in meditation. Like you don't sit in meditation to get clear and, and then all of a sudden the ideas will come to you. You just let things just sit in meditation. Don't have the goal of trying to get clear or,
so just have the experience of it.
Yeah, just be in it. And
Right.
Clarity comes. Clarity comes the more you meditate, rather than, I need to get clear and then I'll be able to think about what I should be putting out into the world or
Right.
Just let clarity be there and that's it. So that's been something I've been working with lately is, just allowing for wisdom to, arise.
Right.
Spontaneously. Just,
Like
I'm
whatever
really
comes
good
up.
at, So I do think it is important as a new teacher to get, be clear on what you want to put into the world, but also to just listen to your body and let it speak to you. And then something for all of us would be to never stop questioning, whether it is about why you have the habits that you have or why it is that you have the friends that you have or never stop questioning. I feel like the second that we start to ignore our questions or run from them or hide from them, then we're really taking ourselves out of the experience that life has to offer, and which is learning. If you stop questioning, I just feel like that's it as far as learning goes.
Yeah, I think that's really great advice. It's really powerful advice, and it keeps you from getting stagnant and becoming stuck. And amazing.
Yeah,
amazing.
So for the future. Well, the great thing that I know is that I'm really passionate still about teaching yoga. So I teach a lot of vinyasa yoga and I do it. I always like to move the body in different ways. So we never just do the same thing every single class. We do different peak poses every class. Like I'm still really passionate about that, which is amazing. and I don't know why I say still. I just feel like I'm almost 40, so it's fun that I still have that passion to move the body. Yay. It's fun to still be able to do all this stuff and teach challenging poses from a really mindful, and I don't, non-pressure. If you want to come to like a no pressure zone, my class is basically the place where you'll laugh, try something hard or not, like no pressure. So
your classes are pretty chill for sure.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever seen you like get upset at a student.
No.
I don't think that this ever really happened.
No.
Yeah.
It has happened, but no, definitely not in the last 5 years. So, like I said, I lead teacher trainings now. So if you're in 200-hour wanting to become a new teacher, we have one starting in Vancouver in January.
Awesome.
And we're going to Sri Lanka to do another one next October, 2019. Sri Lanka is a beautiful space to immerse yourself in for a month of yoga.
Imagine. Yeah,
it's beautiful.
Sounds amazing.
So peaceful.
Yeah.
And I do a lot of yoga or meditation workshops around Vancouver and meditation teacher trainings, which essentially, because, my whole approach to meditation is to just sit and see what arises. But some days you need different techniques depending upon what you're going through. So when I lead workshops or I lead teacher trainings, I teach many different methods to meditate, depending upon what resonates with you as a teacher or a practitioner. You just try what you love. So again, it's really, my whole approach is quite open in offering very accessible styles of meditation for people. And I have lots of stuff on my website, lots of meditations for free and yoga videos for free on my website.
And I heard you did this thing called mindful mass where you lead group meditations in public sometimes.
So that was a highlight of my career, and it's still going on.
Yeah.
You, Andy, Chad, and I started mindful mass 2 years ago. 2 years ago this month, basically.
Right, yeah.
And we were doing them 4 times a year, basically around solstices and equinoxes. It just happened to work out.
Yeah.
And our goal has been to bring meditation and quiet to really public, loud spaces for free, specifically for free. And that's a big thing for me, is trying to do more and more for free, because like I spoke about this when we first started talking, this is a luxury, a lot of this work. And unfortunately, it's also very expensive. So it makes it even more of a luxury to even do your yoga teacher training with me. It costs money.
Yeah, well, yeah.
So so to counter that and to feel like I'm still being of service in this world, I love to do as much for free as possible. So it was really exciting to partner with you on Mindful Mass and offer these free events. And also, we did it last Christmas and we had a band play at the end.
That was
we had
really
free
cool.
music for everyone.
Yeah.
And so we're going to keep doing this. And
I really like the art gallery one.
I know,
was
we want to
cool.
do the art gallery. So if anyone out there wants to support us with helping us find a cool space, that's in an urban setting, right? Like in Vancouver, in a
in and around Vancouver,
in a semi-urban setting, where we can kind of go and quietly disrupt the area.
Yes.
Where we don't need to get permitting because we're not doing anything that's going to be noisy. Like, please, can someone help us find a really...
We got to get permits to go sit in public.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's what we got to do. It's fun.
Yeah.
Well, I've really enjoyed working with you. It's been amazing. It's been an awesome journey just to go through this process and do what we were doing and are still doing. And we're going to have a little meeting right now with our good friend Chad to discuss that a little more. So thank you so much for sitting down with me today. I'd love to do it again. You were awesome. And I feel like we were just scratching the surface. I really feel like we go for another hour, no problem.
Yeah, next time
we'll go a little deeper. Maybe come back on in like 6 months or something. We'll see what's going on for you. And people can reach out to you at CarolynAnneBudgell.com.
Yep.
You're active on Instagram. You're on Facebook. Pretty easy to find. So I'd highly recommend checking out Carolyn's teacher training or her classes locally or going on retreat. You got lots of stuff on the go. So, and you're out there. So thank you all for tuning in today. And of course, if you want to come for a float at Float House, you can use the promo code Vancouver Real. That will get you a 20% discount on a single float. And if you want to support the podcast, well, floating definitely helps because it sponsors the podcast, obviously. But also just engagement, right? Just the likes, shares, comments, all that stuff does contribute because it does help us get noticed and reviews and ratings and all that good stuff. So if you feel like supporting us at all in that way, in just a very simple click of a button, it definitely all helps. So thank you so much for your listenership, and until next time, I'll stop droning on now to whatever is.